My name is Rowan Hale, and this morning my father tried to erase my future. The wind was sharp against my face as I stood on the front porch, my shoulder still throbbing where he'd shoved me into the hallway wall. The letter from Northbridge Labs, creased half-torn, trembled in my hand like it knew what was at stake. Behind me, through the cracked door, his voice thundered again. "You're not going anywhere, Rowan. You'll only embarrass us." His tone wasn't anger, it was ownership, the kind that made every inch of the house feel smaller. I stared at the car parked at the end of the driveway, my car, but the keys dangled from his hand like a trophy he'd won for breaking me. My phone buzzed. Priya's name flashed on the screen. "Are you outside?" she asked. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "There's a street camera near your gate. Step past it, right now." For a second I froze. My heartbeat wasn't fear, it was calculation. If I stepped out, everything changed. If I stayed, nothing ever would. I could still smell the aftershave he used every morning, that same sterile mix of authority and control. He was behind me now, close enough that his breath touched my hair. "You'll thank me someday," he said, low and cold. I turned the doorknob anyway. The metal burned against my palm, but I didn't let go. I pushed the door open, stepped into the daylight, and heard him shout my name like it still belonged to him. For the first time in my life, I didn't stop walking, and that was the moment my story stopped being about survival and started being about taking back what was mine. The air inside the house always smelled like lemon polish and quiet resentment. That morning, it carried something heavier, finality. I stood in front of my mirror, running the steamer over my blazer one last time. My resume sat neatly inside a blue folder. Every answer I'd practiced whispered in my head. "Tell me about a challenge you overcame." I smiled faintly. I was about to have the perfect one. Then came the knock that wasn't really a knock, more like a push. Lila strolled into my room wearing oversized sunglasses and a silk robe. She was scrolling through her phone, her voice flat. "You're driving me to Midtown Plaza by noon, right?" I didn't even look up. "I can't. My interview's at 12:30. She blinked, slow and deliberate, as if I'd spoken a language she didn't understand. "No. I told my friends I'd meet them. You can call those job people and move it." When I turned to her, she smirked like she'd already won. "You've been applying for years, Rowan. One more won't kill you." The words slid under my skin. "You can call a cab," I said, trying to keep my tone even. That's when her voice changed sweet and poisonous. "Then I'll tell Dad." 2 minutes later, Gregory Hale stormed into my room. His tie wasn't even knotted yet, but his authority was. "What's this about you refusing your sister?" "I have an interview today," I said quietly. "It's my first real opportunity." He laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he wanted to remind me who owned the laughter in this house. "Your sister has a future. She needs to be seen. Networking, image, reputation. Those things matter. That company of yours doesn't." I felt the sting before I saw the motion. He pushed me backward so hard that the edge of the dresser caught my hip. The photo frame on the wall shattered glass, scattering like punctuation to his fury. Mom appeared in the doorway, calm as a spectator. "Why do you always provoke him, Rowan?" I didn't answer. I just stood up, dusting glass from my sleeve, my heartbeat steady and terrifyingly quiet. Gregory stepped closer. "You will drive her." I met his eyes. No. Something inside me stopped yielding at that word. For the first time, he didn't see submission. He saw defiance, and I saw the door behind him open just slightly. The driveway shimmered under the late morning sun, the kind of heat that made the air dance. My phone buzzed again, Priya. Her message was short. "I'm outside. Don't go back in." Inside the house, I could hear the television blaring. My father's voice cut through it, deep and commanding. "You're not walking out that door." He stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms folded, his body filling the space like a locked gate. Lila leaned against the counter, sipping her iced coffee, as if the world revolved around her straw. I walked slowly, careful not to show the tremor in my hands. "Priya's waiting," I said, reaching for my bag. Gregory's eyes narrowed. "That girl again. The one who fills your head with delusions?" I opened the front door halfway. His voice rose. "You step outside, you'll regret it." I pressed the call button on my phone and turned on the speaker. Priya's voice echoed through the living room. "This is Priya Desai from Northbridge Labs. Rowan, your interview is at 12:30. We'll see you soon." For the first time, my father hesitated. The name of a company carried more weight to him than my words ever had. I slipped through the opening and didn't look back. His shout followed raw and furious, but the sound was already behind glass when I shut the car door. Priya's SUV smelled like coffee and safety. She looked at me, once saw the bruise starting to bloom on my shoulder, and didn't ask what happened. Instead, she said, "Focus on the interview. Don't let them take this from you." As we drove toward the city, I kept my eyes on the skyline, tall buildings rising like promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Priya went over last-minute tips, her voice calm, rehearsed. "When they ask about conflict, tell them about problem-solving, not pain." I smiled faintly. What if the conflict is both? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The office tower loomed ahead, glass and steel gleaming like something untouchable. My palms were sweating when I walked through the revolving doors. 47 minutes later, I walked out knowing I'd done well. For the first time, I believed I belonged somewhere that didn't require my silence. Back in Priya's car, my phone vibrated non-stop texts from Lila, missed calls from Dad. "You've ruined everything. You're dead to us." I typed one line and hit send. "I'm not coming home." That night, Priya's apartment was small but calm, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask for explanations. I sat on her couch wrapped in one of her oversized hoodies while the city lights flickered through the blinds. My shoulder ached in rhythm with the hum of her refrigerator. For the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. Priya was typing on her laptop when her phone buzzed. Her expression shifted, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening. "Rowan," she said softly. "Someone just called HR at Northbridge. They said you were unstable, violent. That you attacked your father this morning." The air left my chest like a punch. Who? She didn't have to answer. We both knew. Priya opened an email on her screen. The HR system had flagged a voicemail mail caller, deep voice, confident tone. She hit play. "Her name's Rowan Hale," my father's voice began. "You shouldn't trust her. She's erratic, unpredictable. She's dangerous to hire. I should know I raised her." He even laughed low and casual, as if destroying me was a favor to the world. Then came the line that twisted my stomach. "I'm speaking as a member of the Midtown Business Council. I'd hate for your company's image to suffer from a bad choice." Priya froze the playback. The room was silent, except for my heartbeat. "He used his title," she said. "That's not just personal, it's professional interference." I stared at the laptop screen, the little gray bar that marked my father's voice like evidence. For years, I'd thought he only wanted control. But this wasn't control anymore. It was annihilation. "I told you," Priya said quietly, "people like him count on you staying scared." But he left a digital trail, Rowan. Every word of it. Something in me shifted then. Not anger, not grief, but a cold clarity that hummed through my veins. I wasn't going to plead for his approval anymore. I was going to use his arrogance against him. Priya started saving files to a folder. "We'll back this up," she said. "Timestamp it, transcript it, forward it to compliance." I nodded, my hands steady now. For the first time in my life, the fear that had kept me quiet began to sound like strategy. When she asked if I wanted to press play again, I said no. I'd heard enough. I already knew what my next move would be. The next morning, the city felt sharper, like it knew what I was about to do. Priya was already at her desk, sleeves rolled up, her hair pulled into a messy bun that meant business. On her screen, the voicemail transcript sat open beside a blank email draft. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. My voice was steady now, stripped of all hesitation. "Let's make it official." Together, we wrote the letter, not angry, not emotional, but surgical. Subject, formal complaint. Interference with recruitment process. Every line was a cut through the web my father had spun for years. Dates, times, call logs, the voicemail where he bragged about his position on the Midtown Business Council. The screenshot of his text threatening me. The proof that this wasn't a family misunderstanding, it was professional sabotage. Priya leaned back and exhaled. "They can't ignore this. Not when he used his title." We sent the email to corporate compliance at Northbridge and copied the Business Council's ethics committee. Then we waited. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence like a countdown. 48 hours later, an email arrived. "We've opened an internal review. Mr. Gregory Hale's external communications with Northbridge are suspended pending investigation." I read it 3 times, feeling the words carve space around me, space where fear used to live. That night my father called. I didn't pick up, but I let it go to voicemail. His tone was frantic, this time stripped of command. "What did you do, Rowan? You've gone too far. You'll regret this." But regret was his currency, not mine. A day later, Priya's contact inside Northbridge confirmed that the Business Council had been notified of a potential conflict of interest violation. In their world, that phrase meant one thing: exposure. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I just sat on Priya's couch and watched the city through her window. Below, people hurried across the street, living their ordinary lives, while my own was quietly rearranging itself into something new. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was dismantling the system that had made me small. And somewhere I hoped my father finally understood what it felt like to be powerless in a house he thought he owned. 2 weeks passed, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any scream. The storm had shifted not inside our house, but inside my father's world. Northbridge called me in for a private meeting, not in some sterile conference room, but in a sunlit corner office overlooking the river. The HR director smiled carefully, the kind of smile meant for someone who's been through too much. "Rowan," she said, "we want to apologize for what happened. We've concluded our review. You've been officially offered the position with certain privacy protections attached." For a second I couldn't speak. It wasn't just relief, it was vindication. I'd done it without screaming, without begging, without violence. The director lowered her voice. "And off the record, the Midtown Business Council has opened a separate ethics investigation into Mr. Gregory Hale." I nodded once. That was enough. That evening my phone lit up with a number I knew too well. I let it ring twice before answering. Rowan. My mother's voice cracked. Your father lost his biggest contract today. He's furious. He said you've destroyed him. Please, you have to. Mom. I interrupted, my tone flat. I didn't destroy him. He did that himself. Her silence was worse than anger. Then came the soft, trembling plea. He's your father. No, I said, staring at the city lights outside Priya's window. He's a man who taught me what not to become. When the call ended, Priya walked in with takeout and 2 bottles of water. She didn't ask what the conversation was about. She just handed me a fork and said, "Eat. You're free now, whether he accepts it or not." The bruise on my shoulder had started to fade, but a different kind of mark was taking its place, a quiet strength I hadn't recognized before. Later that night, I checked Lila's social media out of habit. She was crying on a live stream, painting herself as the victim of a jealous sister. But comments poured in faster than she could delete them. Someone had leaked the voicemail. Even her filters couldn't hide the truth anymore. By the time October rolled around, Midtown's skyline looked different to me, less like a city, and more like a system I had finally learned how to navigate. I was no longer the girl holding a crumpled job letter. I was the woman whose name had turned into a quiet ripple through my father's world. One morning, Priya burst into the apartment, laptop in hand, eyes wide with that mix of adrenaline and disbelief. Rowan, you need to see this. On her screen was an internal memo from Northbridge's compliance office CC'd to the Midtown Business Council. My father hadn't stopped after the investigation. He'd made new calls, angrier, sloppier, trying to convince people that Northbridge had hired a liability. But in doing so, he'd exposed something else entirely. The memo described a secondary review into a series of contracts his company had pushed through under the council's name. Procurement fraud, fake bids, personal gain. The kind of paper trail that couldn't be erased by yelling or charm. My mouth went dry. They're going after him for real, aren't they? Priya nodded. They found tax inconsistencies, too. He tied your name to one of the dummy accounts, probably to deflect blame. For a long minute, I couldn't speak. Then the shock gave way to a cold, calm anger. He tried to burn me down with his lies. He just set himself on fire instead. 3 days later, the news hit the local site businessman Gregory Hale under federal review for misuse of council position. There was a photo of him leaving his office, face pale and stunned, followed by one of my mother behind him, head lowered. I didn't feel joy. I felt distance, the kind that finally let me breathe. That night, I packed my few things. Northbridge's HR had finalized my relocation package. Portland branch, new office, new apartment, new nameplate. When I told Priya I was leaving, she hugged me tight, her voice thick. They taught you fear. You taught them consequence. At dawn, I waited at the bus terminal, the same blue folder in my lap. The bruise on my shoulder had faded to a faint mark like a signature time couldn't fully erase. I scrolled through one last message from my mother. He's falling apart. He says you've ruined him. Please come home, I typed back. He ruined himself the moment he decided I didn't matter. Then I hit delete instead of send. Some words don't need to exist. As the bus pulled away, the city grew smaller behind me, a mosaic of glass and memory. I wasn't escaping anymore. I was moving forward. When my phone buzzed again, it wasn't them, it was an email from Northbridge. Subject: Welcome to Portland, Rowan. We're lucky to have you. For the first time, I smiled without guilt. I'd learned the truth about control. It only works when you let someone else hold the pen, and I was done letting anyone write my story but me. The bus hummed steadily along the highway, the sky outside washed in gray light. My reflection stared back at me in the window. Same brown hair, same eyes. But something was different. For the first time, the person looking back wasn't bracing for impact. She was just existing. I opened my laptop on my knees. A new email notification glowed in the corner of the screen. It was official employment contract, Northbridge Labs Portland branch, my name printed neatly at the top. No longer a risk, just real verified mine. Scrolling to the bottom, I saw a small note from the HR director. Case closed, verified truth. Those 3 words hit harder than I expected. I leaned my head against the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. For years I thought freedom was something you begged for, that justice only came with apologies. But it wasn't about either of those things. It was about taking the truth, the ugly, complicated truth, and refusing to let anyone twist it again. My phone buzzed one last time, an unknown number. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I pressed silence and slipped the phone back into my bag. The world didn't end. The bus didn't stop. Life kept moving forward without his voice in it. I thought about my father's words all those times he said I'd never belong anywhere. He was half right. I didn't belong there. I belonged where truth didn't require permission. Outside, the landscape opened into mist and pine. The road curved toward a city I hadn't seen yet. But for once, uncertainty didn't feel like danger. It felt like possibility. I closed my laptop and whispered to myself a quiet promise no one else would hear. I didn't win because he fell. I won because I finally stood. And for the first time in my life, the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was peace.